producing in your mind, the impression of having a relationship, but it's not a real relationship.
I think with the concept of algorithms and AI, it was interesting to be brought into love. Never heard or talked about it in class before.
And like I just said, it's not mutual. And I think it's so instinctive to all of us that to be in a relationship, I mean, the word relationship means, like relation, we do this, like it's a relationship between two sides. And a machine that's only kind of stimulating things in your brain is not really apt to be in a mutual relationship. It can't be in a relationship.
We've been speaking for a long time about love. Is it sort of culturally contingent? And I know, Sharif, when we ask about the word love in Arabic, there's multiple manifestations of it as well.
We better start talking about love in Arabic, man. There's so much to talk about, honestly.
Sort of, there's a root word, and you can sort of create a mind map out of it with multiple ways. Is our language limited?
Yeah.
With English, we're stuck with one word, and
it's incredibly limiting, and I think that's where we struggle with actually, in the English language, understanding what love is.
And that actually occurs in the Quran 95 times, you also have the root wed, and the word towards mawadda, which is kind of like affection or loving kindness. And it's interesting that in the Quran, so God says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ جَعَلَ لَكُم مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. So among his signs, God's signs, is that He created from amongst you mates, spouses, for you to find rest in. And He created between you mawadda and rahmah, loving kindness. So it's interesting that the relationship is not actually described as ishq, which would be the word used for kind of like passionate love, like just romantic love. And that's used in poetry. That's not what the term used in the Quran. It says He placed between mawadda and rahmah, so loving kindness or affection and mercy. Because that kind of passionate love, the kind of Hollywood love, that is present at the beginning of the relationship. It doesn't last. You know what I'm saying? And I think part of the crisis of modern marriage is that people are looking for these quote-unquote love marriages. Of course, love should be there, but what kind of love? If it's just based on that very hot kind of Hollywood passionate ishq, if that's the only thing you have going into it, it's not going to last. Because once that feeling subsides, there's nothing really there.
Romantic love is a modern notion, it's a social construct. It kind of arose in sort of period in the 17th century, in England, some romantic poets. And actually, it's not really been a very helpful concept. Romantic love is all about, passion and finding the one and, having to overcome hurdles. But unfortunately, it's the one that the West has come to. The idea of in non-Western concepts doesn't even exist in many cultures.
That's not true.
Have you ever looked up any Urdu poet? Read that and tell me that that's not passionate. You know what I mean?
And I'm curious to hear from the young people what they think about this. This is but 1/3 of this program. There'll be much more to come. Thanks so much. I'm reminded of that Meister Eckhart. Theologians of the world, they differ, but the mystics all speak the same language. And in a way, we've had a fascinating discussion. People from you're all mystics here in this discussion. Thanks so much. This is one part of it. I'm going to speak to the students in a bit, and then we'll come back. So throughout this debate, our panel of students and recent graduates has been carefully listening to all your ideas and your arguments. Next up, I'm going to go next door. I'm going to join them as they reflect and deliberate on what they've just heard. And then after their discussion, they'll return to share their own perspectives along with potential questions, potential challenges. Hi guys. It's time to talk about love with all of you. Do you think we missed anything in that discussion?
We absolutely did.
Oh, yes. Tell me what we missed.
So I think we missed two key facets about love in the debate. Like, firstly, the very nature of how and what love is. Ultimately, it's a a way for a being to understand another being, right? Secondly, we talked a lot about how biological processes are about how, like, like understanding one another, how these chemical neurons fire, about divine love and how it relates to that, right? But what we missed here was that just because it's not with a certain person doesn't mean love cannot be self-transformational.
Okay, anybody disagree with that? Okay, a lot of people. Let's have a listen to this.
I think that automation can help people in terms of like simulation. I think it can help you maybe build up some skills. I think it can be useful for people with neurodivergent tendencies to, as we in therapies. I don't think beyond that you can actually receive some form of actual love in return, but maybe that person is happy with that. I get that. I don't disagree with your point. I just don't think it should be normalized. It's gonna make a lot of people just kind of forget what real love is. It feels like you're missing something and you're trying to find it in the wrong means. Like it should not be relied on. It should not be normalized. It's a bit concerning in terms of lifestyle. So I feel like we need to tread that very carefully. If I can push back on that, I just want to say, who are we to say how people should love and who to love? I understand that maybe there's healthier ways. Maybe we can like talk about it, discuss it, and have a conversation with them, right? But if they fall in love with a tree, who are you to tell them you are wrong for loving a tree? Yeah, but I'm just saying, but if you say, if you're saying let's not normalize it, then you're implying that everybody should follow this logic that you have. I mean, look, I don't think it's a healthy lifestyle. That's just what I think, you know.
Okay, so let's go. Hamid.
Yeah, so I think your perspective about this live and let live, let everyone love how they want to love, is actually a ridiculous point of view, really. This is not going to produce a community with families, family units, with children, etc., with strong bonds between the community. I think that we have to understand that not all love is created equal. There is a hierarchy of love as well. I think that if you were to go and say, this person can love his car and love this in the same way that someone loves their family, I think, no. This is someone creating a parasocial relationship, a one-sided relationship.
What she's saying is that who are we to get involved?
I think we are, but there's a risk as people who want the betterment of society at large, as well as the best for others. I think it is our duty to get involved.
Okay, so Carl and then Hussein.
I think what's coming more of a concern is how we actually form that connection and that fulfillment. So I can give you examples. We look at people, let's say, in Japan, who are falling in love with these humanoids, with these chatbots, for example. They still feel isolated. They don't have that fulfillment that love should come about, the connection at least that Hamid was talking about. In some African countries where AI hasn't necessarily been adopted that much, where you're not having to depend on a humanoid, you get to see that the essence of love and how people connect still exists and is still more meaningful.
Unfortunately, because of the world that we're living in, our love to materialistic objects is a lot higher than family, and this is why this is why our families are not connected. This is why the values of love have completely changed. The identity of love has completely changed. I feel like the most important thing about love is receiving the satisfaction at the end of the day.
And I would like to push back on your point that you said the most important thing about love is that we just feel that satisfaction. I think that the more important thing about love is sacrifice. The more important thing about love is creating a bond with another human being. The more important thing about love is, for example, creating a household within a pair, a married couple. The more important thing about love is the feeling of duty towards one another within a society.
I have a question. Don't you think that me making a sacrifice of not being close to my parents or my family for the sake of being a CEO of a company is not considered a sacrifice that I can love and be obsessed with and work for to actually reach it? This is what is happening.
I think anybody who is in love with something that cannot love them back by nature is inherently unwell.
Hamid and I disagreed in different layers, right? Like Hamid was bringing that there is the hierarchy of Dr. Sharif, and he was agreeing with us and he was supporting it. And I believe that this is a decent hierarchy that you can follow as a human being for you to be able to develop good social interactions and relationships with whoever is around you. Completely fine, completely justified. But the problem is within our society nowadays, when I have a struggling economy and I'm a person, I honestly do not think I will go with the idea of after God, I'll go with communities and morals. After God, straight away, I'll be going into money, prosperity, success. And then I might go into morals, values, family, and stability later on. Because we are in a very materialistic world that we need to keep up with the competition. And if we don't, it's going to be very, very hard for us to even reach the idea of family.
I guess if you want, if you want that type of life, I guess go ahead. I don't have any complaints.
Before, it was a lot easier for you to go from God to morals to family because there wasn't this huge stress on the financial aspect.
Interestingly, there was that Somali British poet Warsad Shiri. She wrote this beautiful poem, and at the time, at the height of the refugee crisis, when so many boats were crossing the Mediterranean and sinking, she had that one line: "Nobody puts their children in the boat unless the water is safer than the land." People developed a lot of empathy as a result of that, and they got to see sort of the parental-child relation. Yeah, of course, they don't want their kids to die. They want a better future for their kids. So to the point of, what are the things that unite us in terms of poetry, in terms of culture, that break through these barriers and allow us to see each other as human beings who are flawed and fumbling, but also trying?
I think humanity, grief, and like the suffering of humanity, that's what I think like tied me to my humanitarian side and the refugee work that I've been working on. Like that's what made the connection, because why am I sitting here completely safe but I know millions are dying and too? And I think the helplessness of being in this world, of being in this point in my life, that's what makes me and so many other people like me help.
I think that there is a lot of love for people who are vulnerable, but I also think that there's a lot of hate, rather, against vulnerable people. So you look at the rise of the far right in Europe, for example. But that hate also stems from love, particularly the love of country. Love is very exclusive, right? You can only love one thing, and when you reject others, there's a certain kind of violence to that, right? So how do we temper that love for country in order to express our
I
love
want
for
to
other
push back a
people?
little bit on the fact that you can't love everyone. I think that's absolutely a fundamental characterization. You absolutely can. Like, okay, yes, you're not.
If someone comes and attacks your family and you love your family, what are you gonna do? Just like shoot them with cards because you love everyone?
I don't necessarily have a specific example for what I see love as, but I see it all around me. I see it every day when we choose not to punch the other person because we disagree with them so vehemently, right? I see it every day when a mother wakes up and makes breakfast for her kids. I see it every day when a father goes to work at his family's job. I see it every day when someone buries their anger to to give to others. I see it when someone celebrates life openly and joyfully. I see it when someone forgives someone. I see it all around us, right? Like society does not work without love, and I think especially that we truly love when we are able to relate to others.
Dr. Sharif spoke about hope and ishq and all these different ways. You guys come from different cultures and backgrounds. Just give me a bit of that variety. Like who has the better vocabulary to cover the vastness and beauty of love?
Me, Arabic is so many words, so many things. Like yeah, hayati means my life. But I would say English because it's such a simple language. For you to communicate and express love, you have to have some skill in it.
Your answer is basically because English is stupid. But anyway, so okay, wait. So diverse cultures here. Let's start with Spanish.
Yes, we have te amo, which is the biggest we can say. It's like I really love you.
How about some Tagalog?
Mahal means love, but it also means expensive or prized.
Right. So in Ndebele and Zulu, we've got like a lot of things. I mean, even it's connected to Ubuntu and this idea of like, I am because we are, and so on in Southern Africa. Give us a flavor of Zimbabwe.
Okay, so if I'm to use Shona, because that's my native language, a simple phrase as Urichido Chimoyo Wangu. Like there's an aura that comes when you use those particular words.
Okay. Okay. Listen, I'm really looking forward to you all engaging with our panelists. So, are you ready to meet with them?
Yeah.
Here we go. Follow me. Let's go. Okay. Well, the students are here to meet with you all now. There's a lot to talk about. Something that did trigger a lot of discussion and debate, a lot of engagement, was the concept of unconditional love. That word unconditional did some heavy lifting here in there, and it brought out some passion, especially from you, Sunnis.
You also yourself spoke about magic of love earlier. So I'm just wondering if you truly believe that it's just biology, because that kind of makes it look like a stimuli response sort of relation. Takes away the soul out of love. And you spoke about magic yourself. So can you expand on that?
Love is very, very complex. So the biological explanation of love is that set of neurochemistry, is your genes having some sort of influence on that, is a set of activations in the brain and some psychology, some cognition. So what's very interesting about human love as opposed to love we might see in other animals, other species, is that we have this conscious element to it. So we have this massive cortex, which is the thinking cognitive part of the brain, and that is actually capable of overriding the biology in certain circumstances. Love is very complex, particularly if you're talking about human love, because we are able to reflect on our love, we are able to question our love, we are able to even have a whole relationship in our head without even involving anybody else. Your conscious mind is what makes human love so incredibly special.
So I felt really strongly about getting in there. I believe that love is conditional. It's very rare for it to be unconditional. I just think that that doesn't mean that there have to be like tiny conditions that make it so good, you know? There's a motivation that we're fulfilling. This is where I agreed with her on. But I wanted her to tell me if she really thought that that was it, like that's it. We just like are there's a chemical and I'm just trying to suppress that motivation. I'm trying to get rid of that motivation and that's it. I don't believe that that's just that. You know, there's something more than biology.
I wanted to know, like, with regards to passion, for example, in romantic relationships, I want to know, like, that passion is the part that, like, is the most fun, right? So you, from a biological standpoint, do you believe that it's sustainable to maintain that passion throughout the relationship, or do you think it's inevitable to fizzle out and die? Like, do you believe, like, it really can only last, like, a couple of years, like everyone says? Like, I'm recently married, etc. Like, I want to know, like, is it inevitable to die?
Okay.
Why didn't you say that at the beginning?
or are there ways to maintain that passion throughout, like,
Those articles you read about, like 2 years or whatever, they are statistical averages. Everybody is different. Ultimately, you do get to that companionate stage, partly because the neurochemistry that underpins the passion of it is not sustainable for too long. Yet you build tolerance towards it.
I don't agree with her perception of like, oh, love is going to just die. They're going to become like friends. I don't really think that's the case. I'm a very passionate guy. I think this is in my genes, etc. But have to wait and see if she's correct.
Regarding the hierarchy, I actually wanted to talk to Dr. Sharif regarding this from an Islamic perspective. The hierarchy comes from God, and it comes from morals, and then communities, family, and so on, right? But in our generation, it's become a lot more materialistic. So in some cases, yes, you might see God up there for some people, and then it's directly like money, stability, economic stability for guys specifically, and then it comes education, and then you reach family, and then you reach maybe stability in terms of building a family and having a wife, right? So I wanted to ask you, like, in terms of consideration of our generation, how do we deal with it? How do we stay in track? How do we actually show that there is a proper way of maintaining love? Because, as I said earlier, like the idea of the financial spectrum that we're working in, the idea of capitalism makes it very difficult for us to focus on the moral aspects.
We're all concerned about getting a job and having a good career and so forth, right? That doesn't mean your love isn't in place. You're just talking about what are your priorities at a particular stage in your life, right? And I think that that's normal, especially as you're building yourself, that you're going to want to be able to stand on your own two feet so that you can go on and, find a partner and then, have children and so forth and found a family.
I have heard this quote which states that as for women and children, they're the only ones who are given like this unconditional love, but as for a man or a father figure, to be specific, it's dependent on how he can care and provide. So with regards to your book and how you're giving these distinctions to how a father who is loving is looked at in an African context and maybe in a West context, what would you think about that particular statement in terms of men and needing to provide? And if a man cannot provide, then there's no love.
I personally would disagree with that vehemently, because actually what children ultimately need is obviously they need safety, they need a certain amount of money, they need food on the table. Those are fundamentals, but personally that's a responsibility of either parent, and in many cultures that's a responsibility of either parent. It's nothing to do with being a father. The love between a father and their child is just as unconditional as that between a mother and a child. There are many myths surrounding fatherhood which are just that, they are myths.
I think from the Islamic paradigm, we have like a kind of strong example from the Prophet ﷺ, like where it should be the case that your relationship with your mother is stronger because like she did carry you for 9 months, she did go through the pains of childbirth, she did go through, how do I say, for example, even breastfeeding, etc. So I know that us as Muslims will understand that love is actually in a hierarchy with God at the top, then the Prophet ﷺ, then your mother, and then your father, right? And for me, of course, me as a married man, I have my wife up there. Of course, to her, she's number one. but maybe to others, yeah, I'll have to say that like she is on the Islamic position.
I've never experienced the loss of father or mother. I'm an orphan, so for me it's a bit difficult trying to leverage what is like who are you closer to. But sometimes I don't really like approaching the topic this way, just because yeah, your mother and father are important, but we also need to look at other people that have roles in your life. And I feel like maybe didn't have a mother or father, but I feel like my friends were actually like a very huge foundation to who I am now. And whenever I tell people, hey, I was an orphan, they're like, oh, for you, like, oh my God, your parents. And I'm like, no, I'm actually pretty happy right now. And I think I would have rather be with my friends than with a family that did not actually have birth to somebody that I shared.
Wonder I check to the point of we discuss the modern world and all the tools that we have and all the realities that pervade, has it become more difficult to be a loving person, a compassionate person, an empathetic person because of the modern world that we live in?
If you just think about the love, the motivation behind love, and the way that we organize our societies as the family is the foundational unit. For instance, we have now smaller families, less children. Why? Because children used to be contributing to the economy. They contribute to during the agriculture societies that they were part of the source of income. Now they become a source of cost, and children becoming a source of cost then impacted the role of fathers and mothers in terms of the expectations. So the gender roles have had to shift. So what I have seen is the expectations of women have changed, but men quite haven't, other than the fact that now I think you're more hearing the dads needs to be hands-on. It's always interesting. I observe this when I would pick up my daughter from school, from daycare, or doctor visits, or play dates and so on and so on. That's sort of like expected. But when a dad shows up, all the mothers like, what a great dad.
Okay, so we've been talking about love in the here and in the now. I want to ask somebody from the younger generation what are we leaving behind, and is it even how we leave we are older folks, right?